Hello, I'm Danielle Deibler with the League of Women Voters of San Francisco. Along with the League and SFGovTV, I'm here to talk about Proposition E, a ballot measure that will be on the ballot for voters on Tuesday, November 5th. The city has about 130 commissions and advisory boards, or for simplicity referred to as commissions. Some commissions are established in the city charter and may be authorized to make certain decisions and make policy. Most city commissioners are created by ordinance and instead provide non-binding advice to city departments and officials. The Board of Supervisors, the mayor, or city departments can introduce ordinances which must be approved by the majority of the board and can be vetoed by the mayor. Some ordinances are brought to the voters who may be required to approve their changes in the future. Proposition E would create a commissioning streamlining task force to review the city's commissions and recommend to the mayor and board of supervisors by February 1st, 2026, how the city could change, eliminate, or consolidate commissions to improve government administration. The budget and legislative analysts would prepare a report on the cost of each commission. The task force would be authorized to introduce ordinances to implement recommended changes, which would take effect 90 days after the introduction, unless rejected by a supermajority of the Board of Supervisors. Some changes may require voter approval in a future election. For changes to commissions in the charter, the city attorney must prepare a charter amendment for the board to consider placing on the ballot for a future election. The task force will end 24 months after its first meeting. If you vote yes, you want to create a task force with authority to make recommendations on ways to change, eliminate, or consolidate commissions to improve the administration of government, require a financial report on commissions, and give the task force authority to introduce ordinances to implement its recommendations. And, if necessary, require the city attorney to draft charter amendments to submit to voters at a future election. If you vote no, you do not want to make these changes. A note on Proposition E. If Proposition E passes with more voters than Proposition D, then Proposition D would fail. I'd like to welcome Kristen Evans. She's a volunteer with the people organizing the campaign No on D, Yes on E, and she's a proponent of Proposition E. I'd also like to welcome Kanishka Chang. She's the CEO of Together SF Action. She is an opponent of Proposition E. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I would like to invite you both to make an opening statement. We typically start with the proponent first. So Kristen, please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I'm here to talk about Proposition E. I am a small business owner, and I also have the pleasure of serving on the Homeless Oversight Commission, which is the most recently created commission by the voters of the city of San Francisco. It was passed by a ballot measure in 2022. And San Francisco does have a lot of commissions, depending on what report you look at. There were 3 reports recently that looked at it: the Rose Institute report, the Civil Grand Jury report, and the Spur organization did an analysis as well. Says that we might have too many commissions in San Francisco. It is a response, though, to Proposition D, which was written in secret. It was put on the ballot by an organization called Together SF that is billionaire-backed, that has a very clear political agenda that you can learn more about through the Chronicle and the Mission Local reporting on their organization. Prop E is an alternative to D. It allows for a time-bound process to evaluate the number of commissions the city of San Francisco has, look at creating good governance, ensuring that commissions are doing what they're intended to do, which is provide public participation, transparency, and oversight, all things that otherwise would be deferring all of our city government to the bureaucrats to make decisions behind closed doors. So Proposition E was put on the ballot by Board President Peskin and the other supervisors that voted to put it on the ballot. And it creates an alternative to Prop D so that we can evaluate in a period of time the number of commissions that need to be made, do a cost-benefit analysis of those commissions, and help create transparency to the public about what our commissions really do and what value they bring to San Francisco. And then we'll make recommendations for changes to those commissions. And any commissions that need to be changed by charter amendment will be put by a vote to the voters in 2026.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
And Kanishka, I'd like to invite you now to make your opening remarks.
Yeah. Together, SF Action put forth Prop D because we believe there are too many commissions in San Francisco, and we feel that it is urgent for the city to get real reform enacted. Prop E, unfortunately, doesn't deliver on any of those mandates that we think the voters and residents of San Francisco really want to see change. Significantly, Prop E creates a task force that is a duplicate of the task force that Prop D proposes, but a unique difference is that Prop E requires that a majority of those task force members are city employees. It also has a new dangerous undemocratic precedent in which this task force gets to make the laws around commissions. So this is a new set of powers that city employees get to have in terms of they will be an unelected body making rules and laws around commissions. We think that that is extremely dangerous and will not help us solve any of our real problems. Prop E was created as a duplicate of Prop D to confuse voters. This is the same thing that supervisors have done in the past, which is to take a ballot measure, create something that sounds the same so that voters are confused and vote both of them down. As Kristen mentioned, it's been put forward by a longtime city politician, Aaron Paskin, as a poison pill to kill Proposition D by misleading and confusing voters. If there was a real intent to enact these reforms, the supervisor certainly has had 20 years to enact those reforms and is only doing it now to try to ensure that Prop D doesn't pass.
I'd like to respond if I could.
I would say a quick rebuttal there.
So Kanishka really left out a major difference between Prop D and E, which is Prop D essentially requires that we eliminate half of our city commissions and committees by setting a cap at 65. It only preserves 22 of the commissions as charter commissions. And then there's like some 23 commissions that it would have to be retained because they essentially provide important, are required by state or federal law. Mm-hmm. So like the local homeless coordinating board is required by federal law for us to receive about $63 million in annual HUD funding. So we would want to retain that. But that only leaves about 20 slots left for our remaining some 80 commissions. And so they've essentially made the decision for the public in secret, behind closed doors. And unfortunately, they really rushed their measure to the ballot. They didn't have any public process. And there's some serious flaws with Prop D.
Okay, and we'll cover more of those at the end, but I'd like to invite you to maybe make a little bit of a rebuttal there as well. And then we'll move into a couple questions about the measure.
We wrote the ballot measure, Prop D, the way that we did because we want to ensure there are real changes made in City Hall to the structure of commissions. Without a mandate of how the city is forced to take some actions and cut things down, there is no guarantee, and we're very suspect that the city would actually make those decisions to cut things down because they've had many years and all they've done is increase the number of commissions. It's important that the Board of Supervisors and this task force has a mandate to make real cuts to deliver real outcomes for San Franciscans, and that's why Prop D requires that these changes are made and requires the city to make the hard decisions about which commissions should be consolidated and which ones shouldn't.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to get into our first question. You mentioned a little bit of this in your opening remarks, the civil grand jury report. There have been a bunch of reports that have come out, but the civil grand jury one was pretty much the most exhaustive. And I'd like to know what role that report played in the actual implementation of reforms, right, in Prop E, the recommendations. That were made in Prop E.
So I think the civil grand jury report, if I'm not mistaken, actually came out after both D and E were crafted.
It did.
I just want to make sure.
Okay.
So the civil grand jury report, though, is a very important document for us to look at, and it actually reinforces why E is a better option than D. Because what it did is I identified approximately 12 committees and commissions that should have some consolidation or be retired. But unfortunately, D doesn't give us that option. The Civil Grand Jury report, the Rose Institute report that Together SF worked with two professors in Southern California and some students to come up with some recommendations about how we should run San Francisco city government. And a third report done by Spur. All three of these reports, none of them said that the right magic number for the number of commissions is 65. So unfortunately, D is extremely flawed. There's other, technical things that I can point to about D, such as the fact that the remaining commissions that are not the 22 named become advisory. And for example, eliminates eliminates or makes an advisory body the arts, library, health, youth, environment, small business, homeless oversight,
Thank you
or
very
streets
much.
commissions.
Thank you very much. I'd like
Yeah.
to give Kanishka a chance to weigh in on this question.
Sure. I think the point that Kristen makes is exactly why Prop E is a flawed measure and is not going to deliver real results. By saying the civil grand jury's report is the roadmap, the civil grand jury report says to what, consolidate or eliminate about 12 to 15 commissions. That still leaves us with a vastly bloated system that is still more than twice the number of other major cities. It's not going to deliver the results that we want, and it's exactly why we need Prop D, because it forces real decisions to get made.
I was just going to respond very quickly to the number of commissions. So when she's benchmarking and saying what's the right number of commissions, she's making references to other areas that are not both cities and counties. San Francisco is unique in that we have both a city and a county, and that's why we actually have more commissions than some of those other municipalities.
Sure, the Rose Report actually did evaluate cities and counties, and they are still less than 65 commissions, which is why we felt that the number 65 was a good buffer. It was actually on the high end. The range was about 50 to 65, and that's where we landed.
Thank you very much. Okay, so then the next question that we have, in reference to the kind of these grand jury recommendations, could some of those be implemented without legislation, without actually having to go to the voters? And Kanishka, I'd like to let you answer that one first.
Yeah, certainly any commission that was created by ordinance, meaning passed at the Board of Supervisors, can also be amended by the Board of Supervisors. So the idea that we need a ballot measure to change those is not accurate. They could amend those at any time that they want. The point of Prop D is that they're actually not willing to do that. They're not willing to reopen any of these commissions on their own and make the cuts and the changes that need to be made because of our political system that has a bunch of stakeholders that want to see the continued system exist. This is exactly the problem we're seeing now through the process of this campaign, is folks that are on commissions, people who have a vested interest in having their power through commissions, are the ones most loudly opposing this ballot measure because they want to continue to have power over city departments, despite them not really providing any results to San Francisco residents and voters. And that's really what Prop D is about.
Okay, I'd like to give now you a chance.
Yeah, I mean, and that's coming from somebody that essentially is part of an organization that's funded by a billionaire that designed a ballot measure in a back room in secret with no public input. And that's why it's flawed. You know, we have a commission like the Health Commission that would essentially be forced to be advisory if it is retained in the 20 remaining commissions. But it actually is the current governance structure for the Department of Public Health. So that's a flaw. I believe the city attorney may be doing some type of analysis that should be released before the election. And so I would encourage people to look for the city attorney's analysis. But as I understand, Prop D was really rushed to the ballot and is really flawed. And it's essentially going to create a lot of rework for what we're going to have to do to go back to the ballot in 2026 anyway.
So I'd like to just stop you for 1 second and just say, what I really like you to focus on, though, is what is good about Prop E.
Correct.
Right?
Sure.
What works with Prop E.
And I'm happy to do
and
that.
much less, if possible, on what is wrong with Prop D. Right?
Yeah.
Because Prop D we'll talk about what's wrong with Prop D in another video in this series. So let's focus a little bit more on what is good about Prop E and why are you a proponent of it?
Yeah, and I'm happy to do that. Yeah. So Prop E is an alternative to D, and that's why it exists. It essentially also is a time-bound process that assembles experts to basically take public comment, to evaluate and do a cost-benefit analysis on the existing commissions, and help illuminate for the public and educate the public about what our commissions do. The civil grand jury report confirmed that they're there to basically create public participation in our governance, to create transparency and oversight. And so I'm on the Homeless Oversight Commission. There's been a lot of concern as the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing budget has grown from $250 million to about $700 million in a very short time. I think the public wants to know, how is that money being spent? This is the forum that has been created to essentially create that transparency and help people understand how that money is actually being deployed.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to invite you, Kanishka, to kind of round things out based on kind of the merits of Prop E, right, and why you are an opponent of it, right, this specific measure.
Yeah. We're an opponent to Prop E because it's not going to deliver any real results. Last time the city took on a city hall driven, let's study the system and make recommendations process, it took 15 years to reform the system. It's very dubious to claim that Prop E will deliver anything. The fact that Kristen is bringing up the Homeless Oversight Commission, that is the 5th commission on homelessness. We had 4 other commissions, and any of them could take up the issue of how is this money being spent? Why isn't it delivering results? Similarly with the Health Commission that oversees the Department of Public Health. That's our city's biggest department, $2 billion. We have not had an updated overdose response plan in 2 years, despite 2 people dying of overdose deaths in San Francisco every single day. So the problem really is that these commissions, while well-intended, are not delivering the results for voters that they're saying they're going to. They're certainly not delivering the transparency and oversight when we have millions of dollars in gift cards out of these departments that are untraceable and untrackable with no accountability. What's happening at these commissions? I think that as residents, we don't have time to engage with 130 commissions, with the 5 committees of the Board of Supervisors. Residents need the options to engage where it makes sense, and that's the goal of cutting the number of commissions down, so it is actually accessible for the public.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to invite both of you to make a closing statement, and we'll go with Kanishka first, and then we'll end with Kristen.
Yeah. We are opposing Prop E because it does not guarantee that there will be any streamlining to the commission system. It doesn't actually do anything. It's been admitted by the proponents that there's no guarantee that it will change anything. Prop E is undemocratic. It gives an unelected task force power to make laws around commissions. This is a huge new set of powers that's pretty unprecedented, and we're very concerned about the overreach that this creates. There are also no provisions for holding commissioners accountable for corruption, and that's really what Prop D is trying to solve for. It's obviously clear to everyone that real government reform is needed. Our local government is failing, and we feel that our residents deserve better. San Francisco clearly has far too many commissions. It's led to too much bureaucracy, lack of accountability in our government, and it's been a breeding ground for government corruption. Prop D will fix the commission system, create a more accountable and effective government via a public process that will be 1.5 years long and involve resident input. Prop D will streamline our commission system, limit the power of unelected commissioners to make decisions for us, and hold commissioners accountable for corrupt behavior. Prop D is endorsed by the Democratic Party. Prop E is not. Prop D is endorsed by public safety workers and first responders. Firefighters, police officers, sheriffs all support Prop D. They do not support Prop E. Small and large business associations also support Prop D because they see how important it is to restore government accountability and oversight in San Francisco.
Thank you very much. And Kristen?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Prop E was necessary because of Prop D and how it got to the ballot. Prop E is actually a measure that was developed in a public forum by the Board of Supervisors. And there was plenty of opportunity to give input into the process about any concerns about the structure of how that process would go forward. It was done with input and was supported by the majority of the supervisors on the board, and it is an alternative approach to evaluating the number of commissions and giving the public an opportunity to provide input into whether or not they want to see those commissions retained. Unfortunately, Prop D tries to make decisions before the cart before the horse. It essentially takes a meat cleaver to our system that has been developed over decades and over 100 years, and it essentially basically forces a massive change in the way that the San Francisco city government is made, and unfortunately does so in a really reckless manner. Instead of having a meat cleaver approach, we really need a more surgical approach. Yes, we can absolutely make our commissions more streamlined, more efficient. We can also ensure that there's a real benefit to the commissions that do exist. And Prop E essentially gives the process in a time-bound way for us in a public forum to evaluate which commissions should stay and which should.
Thank you very much. I will thank you both for sharing your opinions with the voters and giving them a little bit more information on this very important proposition.
Thank you, Danielle.